Hello everyone, I am Bradley Sward, Associate Professor of Computer and Information Science at the College of DuPage in Glen Ellen, Illinois. In this video today we're going to be using GameMaker Studio version 2. We're going to be working with the GameMaker language, so no drag and drop elements for this. And this is basically kind of like part one of a two-part series. We're just going to get a simple deck of playing cards up and so that you can just show that you have a deck of cards working. The part two will be kind of taking that, advancing it, making it so you can easily like shuffle the card, deal a card, shuffle the deck, deal a card, look at the top card, and so forth and so on. That's a little more involved because it just takes a little jiggery pokery to get going. But just using the DS list inside of GameMaker Studio and just kind of setting things up isn't too bad. So the first thing I want to do here, let me just show you this, is to pull down a playing card. I'm starting with an empty GameMaker Studio project. There's nothing in here just yet. I'm not creating my own art, so I went over here to opengameart.org, where I just looked for things, and I found this free file that I can use. And so just, opengameart.org/content/playing-cards-0 is where I am. And once I do that, what I can do here under sprites, I can pull down this new sprite. I will call it Classic Cards SPR. That's the name of this thing. It's technically going to be an animation, but I'm not going to treat it like an animation. I'm just gonna use it so that we can basically set from 0 to 51 the index of the card, and from there it'll know what to draw. And so I have to edit this. I can't just import because for whatever reason I cannot import and bring in a strip image. Maybe things have changed in a while. I don't use GameMaker every day like I used to. Gosh, I wish I could. But so import strip image is what I'm going for here, and then I have the classic card deck from that. And you can see here, this is what's interesting is they're saying that everything here, like how big is this file, how like what are the properties of this thing. Let me see if I can figure it out real fast without getting into too much worry here. Let me find it here on my end. Desktop cards. Let me see the properties of this. So this thing is 7,280 by 3,120. Wow, that's pretty complicated here. But how do I want, how big do I want everything? Well, I know I want 52 frames because I want 52 playing cards, because that's what a deck of playing cards is. I want 13 rows because, excuse me, there's 13 per row because there's 13 suits 13 ranks per suit. And so there we go, and then 4 of each of the different types of ranks. So 32 there, and then what's the, say, what is this? So did I put my calculator pulled up here? So if I take 7,280 divided by 13, I get 560. Oh yeah, that thing was trying to tell me that that was each individual tile. So 560 by 780 will get me there. Now I don't need to worry about anything else because I kind of proofed this image ahead of time. And now, when I pull this down, you can see that there's all these animation frames, and they all show me all the cards that I'm supposed to be using. And just what I'm going to do here, because these things are absolutely huge, and this is real size, right? That thing is huge, like almost the full screen. I'm going to go inside here now that I have everything all set up, and I am going to reduce this down to, in pixels and percent, I'm going to reduce this down in 25%. Oops, apply. And now it looks like nothing has changed, but then if I go down here, you can see that things look that. And so the graphics aren't the best. You have to worry about this. I would do, realistically, you have to pay attention to that. Notice how the face of the queen kind of has got, especially here in GameMaker, kind of has gotten lost. But just for the sake of showing you what to do, I would never do this professionally, but just to show you that you like work your way down to this, because that looks kind of ugly there. So just so we can get everything on the screen nice and easy, I've reduced everything down. So there's 52 cards. It starts from ace and works its way up to king. When you go to do part 2, or when you go to actually use this thing like out in the real world and use it as a deck of cards instead of just going, hey, I got a deck of cards, you do have to be very careful which cards are in which places, and maybe we'll even change things around, because you have to know that 0 is an ace of excuse me, an ace of clubs, and then you have to know that 13 is the ace of diamonds, and so forth and so on. There has to be a way to know. And if you're going to go ahead and change the sprites, you have to make sure everybody's on the same page, so all the cards are in the correct places respectively. So from the sprite standpoint, this is pretty much all we're going to need to get the deck of cards going. We have 52 cards. Everything's nice and neat in here. And again, outside of the slight issue with the scale down on this thing, it's, you know, everything's working fine. So now we can consider the objects themselves. So I'm going to create an object here, and I'm going to call this a card deck, or, you know, deck of cards. What I mean, like deck of cards. And I can spell. I really can. So there's my deck of cards. And if it makes you feel any better, you could go ahead and use this sprite. The only thing you got to watch out for, I mean, we're going to change things up a little bit, but if you know how things go with animations, that if I go ahead and put this object in the room just as it is here and run this, let's just watch your eyes. I don't know what this is going to look like. It's going to go real fast here. And there you go. Oh, it's not so bad. But you can see that basically it's scanning through the entire deck in, you know, less than a second, just going choo choo choo. And so it's, and you know, the animation is working on there. So if you really want to, you can work it out so you can eliminate that. But we're going to take over the draw of this thing, so we don't need to really worry about that. I'm going to move this up to 0, 0 just to make things easy for right now. So that's, you know, touching the upper left-hand corner of the original room here. And just for this, I'm going to change this into 1080p. Just because I know what I'm going to be doing here, and I'm going to need that. Okay, so now everything's in the room, and now I can play around with this. So where's my object? It is. So what I'm going to do here inside a create event, and this is, excuse me, this is getting ridiculous. That's part of the fun of GameMaker Studio, is fighting the IDE. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we need to set up the data structure. And you're thinking, my goodness, I'm going to have 52 card objects and all this. It's like, no, this is the cool part about this, is that we're only going to be dealing with one object, and it's this deck of cards, and we're going to be maintaining the data inside of this, and you'll see as I go here. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to call it the deck, and that's, you know, the, you know, lowercase d for, you know, deck of cards, is going to be equal to something called this. DS list create. And so if you've never used a DS list, you can go ahead, of course, and oops, what? I just thought I would hit F1 and it would go there. And here we go. Come on, there we go. DS list create. Let me find the DS lists. It's kind of like a vector or a smart array. If you want to think of things that, you know, like, if depending on your language, depending on, you know, your, it's a smart array, it's a vector, it's a, you know, it's just, they call it a list because in Python it's called a list, because an array is basically, or a vector is when everything is of the same type, every element is of the same type. But in this case, a list is basically the same idea, but every element could be a different object, but we're not going to go that way. So there's all this code, all this stuff that we can do with this, all this functionality that comes for free. And we don't have to worry about maintaining the array and updating it and moving things around, deleting things. We can just ask the data structure to do it for us. And so the only thing we have to really worry about here is if we create this thing is, you know, there's, you know, without getting into too much detail here, there's static casting and dynamic casting and creating objects on the stack and on the heap and all these things that you'll learn if you go into, you know, into programming / computer science, all these kind of things. But for these most everything you create in GameMaker creates when it gets created, and then when the room gets destroyed, the room is, you know, is basically gone. It's like it is destroyed. But in this case, I have to explicitly delete this, otherwise I'm going to have a memory leak, and memory leaks are, you know, are really bad. All my years of working in the slot machine casino industry taught me that, is because the games are supposed to run nonstop. But if you have a tiny memory leak, it doesn't matter how tiny, you let this thing run for, you know, if your game is running for an appreciable amount of time and you have a memory leak, it will eventually crash. And that's a no-no, especially professionally. So I'm just going to go in here and put in a destroy. event here. And when this thing gets destroyed, it's going to go ahead and say DSList destroy. And I'm going to say the deck of cards. And so now everybody's happy. This thing gets created when it gets created, and then when it hits the destroy event, it gets destroyed. I don't know why. I don't know why it's not letting me put everything. I don't understand the stupid interface. I don't understand what's happening. Why it can't show me destroy? Oh, there you go. Create and destroy in the same interface here. So there's my create, and then there's my destroy. And so now here in the create, again, this is just a simple deck of cards, so we're not gonna get into too much detail here when it comes, and we'll do that in the next video. I'm just gonna say cards in deck is equal to 52. I'm going to maintain that because there's 52 cards in the deck. And I'm going to add 52 numbers to this deck. Because, coming back to this, we're saying inside the sprite 0 is going to be the ace of clubs. I'm sorry, clubs. And then it's just going to move on from there. So this DS list, instead of holding objects, is just going to hold, basically just integer values. So what I can do here is for for var I equals 0, I is less than cards in deck plus I. I'm just going to go ahead and say, okay, for my DS list, let's see, is there a push? Let me just see, I don't think there's a push, but there's definitely an add. And then I can say add to my deck, and then add the value, the value I. So at this point, when I come out of this, okay, good. When I come out of this, this DS list called deck, which I've instantiated up here, will have 52 elements in it, and they'll all be from 0 to 51. And then from there, what I want to do is shuffle this. So there's DS list shuffle. You don't want to look up how to shuffle things yourself, right? So I thought there was shuffle. What's it? Oh yeah, DS list shuffle, and I can say shuffle that deck up. And everybody's happy the way things are going. So that covers the beginnings of the data structure. Like I said, this isn't really going to be on too long of a video here. I'm already all of me yammering about this stuff. But at this point now I have a deck of 52 cards, and I have a way to kind of show everything off here. So now I'm going to take over the draw event, because even though I've done all this work, obviously, it doesn't mean a darn thing for what's going on over here in the actual game. According to this, everybody is still doing everything here. So I'm going to take over the draw event so I can draw out all 52 cards. And so you got to remember, as always though, because when you take over the draw event, you have to know what you're doing, because you're basically telling GameMaker that you know better about how to draw the object than GameMaker would. And now you can see that technically this object exists in my scene, but it's not drawing. It's not really doing anything when it comes to the visual aspects. So what I am going to do here is I'm just going to say, basically, for every element in that DS list, for var I equals 0, and I is less than, what did I call it? Cards in deck plus I. The IntelliSense is getting much better in GameMaker over the years, so I really appreciate the hard work they're doing there. So now what I can say here is just give me a draw. I'm going to draw a sprite. And I'm going to say which sprite, classic card sprite. That's my sprite. And I'm going to say which subindex, and that all matters on what card, what the value inside the deck is, because that's my subimage. So I'm not going to say I or anything like that, or just 0. Sometimes you want to do that, but in this case, I want to go back into my deck and say, okay, get me whatever's in the the I value, and for whatever reason you have to use the pipe. You can't just do square bracket, I square bracket like you can in every other language. This is just one way to differentiate and say, hey, I'm using a DS list, which is fine. Once you get used to it, it doesn't bother me in the slightest bit. And then what I'm going to say is I'm going to say X is 30 times I, and then I'm going to say 0, or I'm going to say Y. Or how about this? 30 times I, or X plus 30 times Y, I times Y. Oh, yeah, let me just show you what that looks like. At least in my head, I know what it looks like. Let me make sure the IntelliSense is happy. And now let's take a look at this kind of stuff here. So, okay. So now you can see here are my 52 cards all shuffled up. 2, 6, K, whatever you can kind of see. And you can take the time to verify one, and I will do that here in a second, and come back to you to make sure that it's drawing 52 different cards. So I was just thinking about this. One way I can test this for sure is I can pull a draw text here, and I can say x plus 30 times I plus 5, I suppose, and then y. Let me just make sure. Then, yep, my y is my y. Let me just maximize. If I maximize it too much, it gets weird. I don't know. And I say y plus 50 or something like that. And the text I want to draw is basically the deck, or just, yeah, the deck at the ith value. So we can compare. What is, like as always, what is Brad talking about? A picture's worth 1,000 words. And it's not doing what I thought it would do here. Maybe because the draw color is maybe white. Let me see what the default, let me just fix up the draw set color. I set it to see black. And now let's see what happens. Much better. And now you can see the value in the array or in the list. And there's my 1, 44, 38, and so forth and so on. So now it's kind of cool that you can see that it's working. Let's see, if I go back into the create event and just comment out the shuffle for a brief moment, this will 100% guarantee if we're doing it right or not. So I go, okay, it goes from 0 all the way up to 51. So there's all 52 cards that I'm expecting to see in my deck. And that shuffle element is basically what's going ahead to shuffle. But one thing maybe you noticed, maybe you haven't here. Let me run this a couple more times. And again, this is just the simple deck of cards. Here, 2, 6, King, 8, right? If I run this again, you will see that I get the same exact stuff, 2, 6, King, 8. That's because GameMaker, the random number generator, is pseudo-random and always starts at the same place in the same seed value. So again, I would never put a randomize directly in something like this, because usually you only want to randomize, you want to control the randomization yourself. Like in this case, if I create a whole ton of objects all in the same millisecond, the randomizer could very well give me 6 deck of cards that are all shuffled exactly the same. So it's like, how is that possible? Because it's just depends on how fast your computer is and whatever this randomize function whatever it does under the hood. Let's see, does it tell us so much? It doesn't really give us too much information about what it's doing under the hood. And as you get more, advanced with your programming and all that, sometimes you really want to know what is going on under the hood to know if you want to use things a certain way. Oh, you could spell randomize with the English Z or the UK S there. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, so that pretty much, that's kind of it here, because now you can see as soon as I run this, and again, I'll change this up in the future here, but you can say now every time I run my program, there's ace 9 6, and come on, I didn't realize it's so slow to run. And then here's now jack 3 8. So every time I run this, you can see that I have kind of what I'm expecting to see. So, and of course, if you don't care about this so much, you can just kind of take over the draw event. If you just want to have a deck of cards, again, this is just to get you started. Those of you who don't want to necessarily follow along the whole way, you just kind of want to follow along until now you have a deck of cards, and now you can kind of tinker yourself, which is just fine. Net with this draw event too, you can kind of get rid of at least the extra stuff. I like to just comment it out whenever I add this kind of dev mode stuff, because you never know when you're going to need to come back to it. And you already wrote it out. So worst case, you comment it back in and it's not what you expect. You kind of tinker, but at least you kind of have something to fall back on when things go wrong in your future. And the more you code, the more things will go wrong, because there's absolutely no way you can account for everything you ever want to do as you go through things. So I think this covers that simple deck of cards idea I wanted to show you guys. And so there you go. Pretty simple stuff with DS list and just randomizing things around and just using the power of the of just printing out different sprites, so that we don't have 52 or 53 objects in our scene. We have one object that is maintaining all the data. And so again, the next video will show you how we can write some, use some scripting to control that a lot more than the nothing that we have here. So as always, if I misspoke, or if you have any questions or concerns, or just something you need to have clarified, you can always email me at swardb@cod.edu, or you can get a hold of me here on the YouTube channel, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So thanks for sticking it out with this video. Hope to see you in the next one, because that's where we kind of get into the nitty-gritty and we get to see, you know, the strengths and weaknesses of the GameMaker Studio library, and we have to do some tweaks to get things working. So I hope to see you there. Either way, I hope you guys have a great day. Hope to see you around. Take care, everybody. Take care.